Only in My Dreams. Written by Theslorg. Beneath the trees, little Rose Alphys shut her eyes against the gust of wind that whipped her white-pink mane about, and took a moment to rest. Her legs were sore from walking so long, but she had no choice. She was a female changeling who wasn't the queen, and that was all it took for her to be cast out of the clan. From the moment she had deemed fit enough to travel alone, she had been sent away, and that was that. She had been given no instructions and no advice. She was completely alone. The weight of her solitude had increased with every tiny step she had taken, until it finally threatened to crush her entirely. Yet, though she could not understand why, her will to survive was strong, and her weary legs had gradually taken her a great distance on the chance that perhaps she could discover that there was more waiting for her than just a cold, lonely death. The air before her condensed into a wispy cloud as she exhaled. She was running out of options. It had been a very long time since she had felt any love, and she was so very hungry. In fact, the only act of love that she could remember was when her father had cast her out of his home. Not to do so would have resulted her in her immediate death. This way, there was a chance, if only a small one. The wind finally died down, and Rose opened her light coral-colored eyes. They moved left and right, scanning her surroundings, as she hoped to find some sign of life. It was now or never. She would not last another day. Seeing nothing of interest, she sat down in the snow, and wrapped her tail around herself for warmth, and blinked away tears as she stared at the sky above. It was turning out to be a very beautiful, and very cold, heart-warming eve. The chill morning wind that whipped through the freshly fallen powdery snow up from the ground and set it swirling through the air in sparkling patterns. Overhead, branches were disturbed by birds, squirrels, or other woodland creatures that would set additional snow cascading down from above. All around, the grass and vegetation were either completely covered in white powder, or it shimmered with a thin coating of frost.
So, this is it?
She thought. Her destiny would be to live a short life that amounted to nothing at all. In all the time she had traveled, she had held onto the last act of kindness from her father, saving it for when she needed it the most. But now, it didn't matter. There was nothing to move on to. Her journey was over. Rose sighed and watched another breath condense and swirled up into the sky. As the tiny cloud dissipated, she blinked and rubbed her eyes with her snow-covered hoof. She thought that she had seen something far above in the distance. Squinting, she stood up and slowly walked forward, eyes glued to the sky. Suddenly, the clouds parted and revealed what she had seen. It could not be. She had thought it was just some made-up tale for when she was too young to travel. She had heard of the great defeat and the glittering piles in the sky, but she never once imagined that the place could actually exist. Yet, there it was, its snow-covered spires rising proudly on the side of a tall mountain, overlooking several half-frozen waterfalls. Canterlot. If the stories were true, she would be offered no kindness from the ponies. And yet, what other choice did she have? She didn't even know if she had the energy left for a transformation, but anything would be better than dying alone. With nothing left to lose, she did the only thing left that she could do. A small burst of warm energy surged through her, as she consumed the last loving memory she could remember. It was an act of desperation. Kind and loving memories didn't offer much sustenance, and, once consumed, were lost forever. Another sharp gust of wind sent the snow swirling once again. When the tree branches stopped swaying and the snow finally settled, Rose Alphys' form had changed from that of a changeling into a small, white-coated Pegasus filly, with her eyes fixed squarely on Canterlot. She shook the snow out of her mane and began her journey anew. I don't know. I think you have enough for one day. Oh, come on, Pony Joe. It's Heartwarming Eve. One more hot chocolate won't hurt me any. Another hot chocolate sale would do good for the day's profits, but Pony Joe knew when some pony had enough. He sat down on the mug that had been drying on his apron, leaned over to the counter, and gave the old stallion a stern frown. "Yeah, well, I ain't cleaning up no mess if you go and bring it up all over this freshly mopped floor." He waved the hoop to indicate the other patrons in the shop. "I don't see no pony else in here who's gonna do it either. So you gonna call it a day or what?" Fine, the old pony conceded. He stood up and threw on a heavy jacket, then placed a small pile of bits onto the counter. "Can I maybe have one for the road?" "For the road is right," a bearded patron near the back corner of the shop yelled out. "It's gonna be all over the road if you let you have it." A chorus of laughter arose. Even the old, hot chocolate-loving stallion joined in. All right, the stallion said. He headed toward the exit and waved over his shoulder. "Happy holidays, every pony. I'll see y'all after the break." "Have a good one, Thirsty," some pony called out. "Yeah, happy holidays." "See you, pal," Pony Joe said, as the old pony made his way outside. The wind brought a few flurries in a short amount of time the door was open. It was a blustery day, and that was for sure. Business wasn't usually all that great on Heartswarming Eve. Just the regulars, really. Today, even some of them haven't showed up. But he wouldn't have closed the shop up for anything. Sure, just about every shop in the city will be closed on Heartswarming Day, including his own, but he saw no reason to do so today. The patrons in here were like a second family. And besides, if any pony wanted to be home on a day like today, they'd already be there. It was simple as that. Rose Fitz's legs locked up, and she nearly slipped and fell to the ground. Before her, further up on the winding, freshly shoveled dirt road, stood at the towering gate into Canterlot City. The gate was flanked on each side by white-coated royal guard ponies in golden armor. They're the mere stoic and alert. She wanted nothing to do with them, but flights into and out of the city were restricted, and Rose wasn't sure if she can even fly even if she wanted to. If she was going to get in, she was going to have to face the guards. They looked like you just imagined in the stories. While the guards themselves hadn't posed much of a threat in them, the spears they wielded were real, and they looked quite sharp. She swallowed and marched forward with her wobbly legs, until she was right in front of the gate, where she stopped and slowly raised her eyes up the guard looking close to her. Only his eyes moved, looking briefly down upon her. They then moved back up into a straightforward position where they remained. Rose looked around for some kind of indication as to what she was supposed to do. The guard rolled his eyes and cleared his throat. "Enter," he offered. Rose stared up at the guard wide-eyed, her mouth slightly open. Clearly, she had misheard. Nothing in her life had been so easy. With Rose awestruck, the guard sighed through his nostrils and gave her bottom slight nudge with the blunt end of his spear. "Go on, kid," he whispered. "Nothing in the city's gonna hurt you," he offered, and a small half-smile. Somehow, Rose doubted the truth of that statement, but it was all she needed to get moving. With one last look back of her frozen wilderness far below the mountain, she stood up and slowly made her way into the city. From the moment she stepped inside, her eyes grew wide, and she had difficulty taking it all in. The city sprawled further into the distance than she could possibly have imagined from way down below in the valley. Buildings of all shapes and sizes rose everywhere. To one side of her, a row of wooden stands and carts arranged in a neat line, which she assumed would be full of fruit, vegetables, and other wares. Had the weather been so more forgiving, she stood ready for the market day. On her other side towered a tall, thin building that looked to be carved from stone. A sign indicating that would be a bookstore hung over the door. Before her, the road stretched onward, lines on both sides with structures promising to hold even more wonders. Rose had never seen anything quite like it. When her journey first begun, she had come across a few small settlements, but she had been far too nervous to attempt to get any closer. Thinking that she had plenty of time to find another place to feed, the little huts back at home certainly couldn't compare. She stopped herself. She no longer had a home, and what memories she had of the old place were a bit hazy. As she thought about it for a moment, she realized that she couldn't even remember one good thing about her old home anyway. Clearing her head of her thoughts, she brought herself back into the task at hand. Without any further hesitation, she slowly stumbled onto a way deeper into Canterlot in search of sustenance. "I'll tell you what," the stallion in the corner said, peering out the window and wiped the hot chocolate from his beard. "I would so not want to be out there right now." "Yeah, me either," another patron agreed. "If I were out there, I'd have to go back home to the wife." The shop erupted with laughter and the sounds of hooves pounding on the tables. Pony Joe filled another mug as he eyed on the snow piling up outside on the windows. "I gotta say, I almost feel bad that I got kicked you guys out of this joint in a couple of hours." He rolled his eyes at the groans and the jeers erupted from the patrons. "Yeah, I know. Look, maybe you can behave yourselves. I might consider staying open for a bit longer. Alright?" As predicted, the jeering turned into cheering, with ponies promising to put on their best behavior. That wasn't saying much with this alot, but he wouldn't try to change them for the world. It was going to be a late night, but the bits he collected would make it more than worth it. As the snow started up again, and darkness began to fall over Canterlot, the bright neon light signs outside Pony Joe's donut shop flickered on. It was hopeless. The streets of Canterlot were almost completely barren of life, and those few ponies who had been outside had been too much of a hurry to get indoors and to offer her more than just a passing glance. Homes and shops alike were closed up as the citizens prepared for the last night before heartwarming day. Rose exhaled softly. She had traveled all this way, had even managed to enter the city where her kind had been utterly defeated, and it all was for nothing. Her legs were too weak to carry her to another village or settlement. Her eyes were too weary to stay open for much longer. She was certain that her disguise would fail at any given moment, and she would be discovered. And there would be no mercy from her kind from the ponies. Her legs gave out on her, and she fell hard to the cobblestone. As she lay in the street, watching the last few stragglers enter their homes and slam their doors shut, she slowly resigned herself to her fate. She stood up and searched for a quiet place to die. "Aw, come on, can't you stay a little longer?" some pony asked. The bearded stallion shook his head. "Sorry, you guys, but I got to head out. Got some last-minute preparations to deal with for tomorrow. I held it off as long as I could, but..." He made a mock salute. "Duty calls." "Hey, you gonna be alright getting home?" Pony Joe called out from behind the counter. "How many have you had?" The stallion waved him off. "I'll be alright. I can handle my chocolate a lot better than Thirsty can." "Every pony can handle chocolate better than Thirsty can," another patron exclaimed. The shop erupted in laughter again. Smiling, the bearded pony opened the door a crack and squinted as the wind blew some of the snow inside. "Happy holidays, you guys. I'll see you all in a few days." He opened the door wide and made to exit, but then hesitated and peered up onto the street for a moment. "Hey, maybe he did drink too many," some pony said. "We're indoors for a reason. Shut the door, you ninny." Sorry, the stallion said. "Just thought I saw some kind of kid all alone out there. Can you believe that? In this weather?" He shook his head and took another peek outside. "Huh. Whatever it was, it's gone now. Must have been my imagination. Snow's playing tricks on me." With that said, he opened the door again, bid one last farewell, and disappeared into the night. Rose had collapsed next to a cardboard box and wrapped her tail around herself for warmth, but it did a little to hold back the cold bite of the frosty air. A small blanket of snow had settled onto her mane and coat, but she was too weak to shake it off. Her breaths came in short, ragged bursts, and it was difficult to keep her eyes open. Just a few minutes earlier, she had heard the sounds of laughter, and watched from her spot in the alley as a group of ponies left the building she was lying next to. They had been maybe 10 yards away, but she couldn't muster up the strength to go to them, much less stay focused enough to try to derive any kindness from them. Now, they were all gone, and here she was, lying in the cold, wet, empty alley, preparing to die. She closed her eyes and waited for the inevitable. She never ever heard the shop's side door open, or the shop intake a breath when some pony noticed her lying on the snow. Her eyes opened a fraction to reveal that a rather plain-looking unicorn, wearing a white hat and apron. She had seen similar uniforms earlier in her travels. He was some kind of baker. His eyes were wide as he moved to untie his apron and wrapped it around her. He was saying something, but she couldn't hear it. It was too late. Pony Joe let go of the apron strings and stared open-mouthed as she saw the little white Pegasus filly, who had been lying before him, transform into a pink-maned changeling. His face grew red as he frowned. He remembered all too well the day that Canterlot had nearly been conquered, the damage to his shop and home, his family and friends running through the streets as they was pursued by the winged vermin that were the changelings, and the stories of his patrons had brewed over for months afterward. He glared down at the creature before him. Rose made no effort to move. She couldn't have, even if she wanted to. She just continued to lie on her back, staring up at the scowling pony above her. Her chest rose slightly with every raspy breath she drew. Snowflakes fell on her face and melted, mingling with a few tears that ran down her cheek.
Maybe death will be just like a dream. Maybe I can dream of a home, a place to call my own.
She closed her eyes, then, at peace with her fate.
I'll be a home for heartwarming day, if only in my dreams.
Suddenly, she heard a clicking noise as something heavy landed beside her, followed by a warmth as something she was tucked around her body. Rose opened her eyes to see a unicorn walking away. He stopped at the end of the alley and looked back over his shoulder. "Happy holidays, kid, and don't let me catch you outside again." He turned around and walked away without looking back again. Looking down, she saw that the pony had wrapped his apron around her. Next to her was a clothes bag, which she opened to reveal the day's entire earnings for Pony Joe's donut shop. It wasn't a permanent solution. Her journey wasn't finished, and there was still every possibility that she would fail. But as the warm energy gained from love and kindness began to fill her body, little Rose Outfit stared after her savior with wonder. He had given her another chance, and that was more than she could hope for. It was a memory that would cherish until the end of her days, for something she vowed that she would never consume it, no matter the circumstances. "Thank you," she whispers. The end. Hello, everypony. Snogwritts here. Wow, that was a great tale indeed. I definitely enjoyed reading it to all of you as always. Okay, now that we're done with the reading, you know what it's time for. It's review time. Okay, so here's this. When it comes to sadfic, my standards are that it needs a lot of tone, because that's what sadfics are. It gives you a lot of sad tone that makes the reader feel sad about its characters or what the writer tends to make the reader feel. And I think the author really exceeds in that, and I definitely felt that. The characters presented in this story definitely resemble the sadness of this fic. The characters really stand out to the tone and sadness of this story, and how the author really wants to influence the reader to keep reading. And what I really feel is definitely on the last part when it was on the twisted ending, it definitely told us a lot about its characters, and about the writer tends to make the reader feel about its characters. And I definitely experienced that, and I definitely think he really did a good job on making this fit into this kind of genre, which includes a lot of tone and thought when you're trying to write a sadfic. Although, my suggestion is to use that tone that the author gave, that did a really good job on, and use a little more descriptive words to, influence that tone a little more. Really, basically, figurative speech, like that really brings tone up, and it really helps a sadfic when you use figurative speech. And I think that I'm not saying just be all out with words and be descriptive as possible. Less is more sometimes, and sometimes more is good. But sometimes when you're writing a sadfic, you really gotta think both ways, but at least describe it as possible to make the reader feel what the writer tends the reader to feel in this sadfic. And that's really my suggestion. Alright, let's wrap this video up. Thank you all for listening as always. I definitely enjoyed it. This sadfic really taught me how tone can really make readers feel, and really care about its characters and what's going on in the story. And I think that will really help on my writing as well as yours. Alright, that's it for me. This is Snogwritts, signing out.